She thought he was a cold, arrogant millionaire who didn't care about anyone's pain. But Emily had no idea that Ethan had been secretly paying for her treatment from the very first day. When the truth came out, her pride ruined everything, and she almost lost the one person who had truly been there for her. Subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories, leave a like, and tell us in the comments, can you really judge someone by a first impression? Emily Carter walked into the hospital looking less like a patient and more like someone showing up to negotiate with life itself. In one hand, she carried an old, wrinkled handbag whose zipper worked 50-50 at best. In the other was a folder stuffed with medical reports, bills, and enough paperwork to make anyone's head spin. Her phone buzzed with another message from the bank. She didn't even bother opening it. She already knew what it said. Not enough money. Treatment getting more expensive. Life being life. "Please, just let me have enough to finish this," she muttered under her breath. "Because if I run out now, it'll be a complete disaster." The reception area was its own little circus. Someone was coughing nonstop. Another patient was arguing with a nurse, and an elderly man kept insisting he'd been sent to the wrong doctor. Emily tightened her grip on her bag until her knuckles turned white. Finally, the receptionist called her name. "Emily Carter? Room 412. Emily frowned. "Are you sure? I paid for a regular room. Like, the cheapest regular room." "Room 412, the nurse repeated without even looking up from the computer. Emily took the key card and slowly walked toward the elevator. Something already felt off. The fourth floor was suspiciously quiet. Thick carpets, soft lighting, polished walls, and not a single person shouting down the hallway. Too nice. Way too nice. She pushed the door open and froze. This wasn't a hospital room. It looked more like a luxury hotel suite she'd never be able to afford. A man stood by the window. Tall, dark hair, white t-shirt, light blue pajama pants. An expensive watch rested on his wrist, probably worth more than her car had ever been. His green eyes met hers for only a second before he spoke in a calm, emotionless voice. "You're in the wrong room." Emily lifted the key card. "Interesting. The door seems to disagree." "It's my room." "Congratulations," she replied. "Want me to hang a sign outside that says, 'Millionaire's Private Kingdom'?" He slowly adjusted the watch on his wrist. "You always introduce yourself like this?" "No. Sometimes I smile first." "And today?" "Today's been terrible." "I noticed." Emily narrowed her eyes. Of course, rich guy. Perfect clothes, perfect room, perfect attitude. The type who probably thought money could solve everything and everyone else's problems were none of his business. "Listen, Mr. Ethan Walker." "Great. Ethan Walker. Trust me, I didn't ask to move into your palace. Your hospital sent me here, so you can stop looking at me like I stole your golden pillow." For just a split second, the corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile. Then it disappeared. "I don't own a golden pillow." Emily let out a short laugh. "That's disappointing. Tough times must have hit millionaires too." At that moment, a nurse rushed into the room looking completely panicked. She apologized over and over, explaining that a mistake had been made. There were no empty rooms left, and Emily couldn't be transferred until the following morning. Emily expected Ethan to complain. Instead, he simply nodded. "She can stay." Emily blinked. "I'm sorry. What?" "You heard me. Aren't you worried I'll ruin the luxury atmosphere in here?" "You already have." The nurse disappeared before either of them could say another word. Emily dropped her bag beside the second bed and carefully sat down. Everything around her screamed money. The furniture, the huge windows, the spotless bathroom. Even the coffee machine looked more expensive than anything she'd ever owned. She suddenly felt like she didn't belong there. Ethan picked up his tablet again, acting as if she had vanished. That somehow irritated her even more. "So, are you always this talkative?" she asked. Only with people I like." "Oh, lucky me." "Funny, I was about to say the same thing." Emily rolled her eyes but quickly turned away so he wouldn't notice the tiny smile trying to escape. The evening passed in the strangest way. Sometimes they sat in silence. Sometimes they traded sarcastic comments. Emily complained that the hospital tea tasted like warm dishwater. Ethan calmly replied, "I don't think it's tea. I think it's punishment served in a paper cup." She laughed, then immediately pretended she had coughed instead. By nightfall, exhaustion finally caught up with her. The treatments had drained every bit of strength she had left. Instead of climbing into bed, she curled up in the armchair by the window, hugging her old handbag against her chest. A few minutes later, she was asleep. Ethan quietly put his tablet aside. For several seconds, he simply watched her. Even asleep, she refused to let go of that worn-out bag, as if everything she owned in the world was inside it. There was a faint crease between her eyebrows. She looked like someone still arguing with life, even in her dreams. Without making a sound, he stood up. He picked up a blanket from the empty bed and gently draped it over her shoulders. Emily stirred. "I'm not asleep," she mumbled. "Of course. You don't have to take care of me." "I wasn't." "Then what's this?" Ethan adjusted the edge of the blanket without looking at her. "I was just passing by." She opened her eyes just enough to see him already walking back toward the window. The same cold expression, the same expensive watch, the same man who looked like he didn't care about anything. But the blanket was warm, and somehow that annoyed Emily more than anything else, because arrogant millionaires were supposed to be easy to hate, easy to judge, easy to keep at a distance. But with Ethan Walker, things had already stopped going according to plan. By the next morning, Emily had already decided Ethan Walker was annoying. Not loud annoying, not childish annoying. Worse, calm annoying. The kind of man who could sit by the window with a cup of coffee, say 3 words, and somehow make her want to throw a pillow at him. Breakfast arrived at 8. Emily stared at the tray like it had personally offended her. "What is this?" she asked. Ethan glanced over from his bed. "Breakfast." "No. Breakfast is eggs, toast, maybe coffee if life is being kind. This is beige sadness." He looked at his own tray. "Mine has parsley." "Oh, wow. VIP suffering." The corner of his mouth twitched. "There's your problem, Carter. You expect hospitals to serve happiness." "No, Walker. I expect food not to look like it gave up first." He actually laughed. Not much. Just a short breath through his nose. But Emily caught it. And for some stupid reason, it made her feel like she'd won something. That became their thing. Breakfast, arguments, tiny insults, quiet little victories. Because in a hospital, time didn't move like normal time. It dragged, it stretched, it sat on your chest and asked if you were scared yet. So Emily and Ethan made their own strange little routine. In the mornings, she complained about the food. At noon, he judged the hospital TV channels like a bored film critic. By evening, they watched whatever garbage was on. Because the hospital was so boring, it made bad reality shows look like a party. "This show is a crime," Ethan said one night, staring at the screen. Emily hugged a pillow to her stomach. "You picked it." "I was curious." "No, you were judging. That's your hobby." "One of them." "What are the others? Being rich and emotionally unavailable?" He looked at her. "Careful. You're getting good at this." "I was born good at this." "Tragic." "Expensive word from a man in expensive pajamas." "They're not expensive." "Your watch just blinked in disagreement." He looked down at it, then back at her. "You have a lot to say about my watch." "It's hard not to. It looks like it could pay my rent and insult me at the same time." For a second, silence landed between them. Too real. Emily looked away first. She hated when jokes accidentally touched the truth. Ethan noticed. Of course he did. That was the irritating part about him. He acted like everything was due Lampachki, but he caught every little detail. The way her smile disappeared when a bill came up. The way she pressed her fingers into her palm after phone calls. The way she always asked nurses about prices before asking about results. Later that week, Emily came back from a procedure pale and quiet. No jokes, no sarcasm, no fire. She walked in slowly, sat on the edge of the bed, and stared at the floor. Ethan closed his tablet. "That bad?" 50-50, she said. "That means bad. That means I don't want to talk about it." "Good. I didn't ask for a speech." She shot him a tired look. "You are so warm and comforting. Truly, a human blanket." "I did give you one." Emily paused. He looked back at his tablet like he hadn't said anything. She hated that she remembered. That blanket. That stupid, warm blanket. She leaned back against the pillow. "I hate hospitals," she muttered. Bold opinion. "I hate the smell. I hate the waiting. I hate that everyone talks softly like volume control can fix the whole mess." Ethan didn't answer right away. Then he said, "I hate the clocks." Emily glanced at him. "The clocks? They're everywhere, and somehow they make time feel slower." That shut her up for a moment, because it was true, and because it was the first thing he'd said that didn't sound polished, cold, or rehearsed, just honest. "Wow," she said quietly. "Look at you. A real human sentence. Don't get used to it. Too late." Their eyes met, not for long, but long enough for the air in the room to feel different. After that, Emily started noticing things she really didn't want to notice. Ethan always lowered the TV volume when she had a headache. He always asked for extra crackers from the nurse, then pretended they were for him. He remembered she hated orange juice with pulp. He once told a nurse, very calmly, that if they woke Emily at 5 a.m. for blood work again, he would personally buy the hospital and ban all needles before sunrise. The nurse laughed. Emily laughed too, even though she felt awful. And Ethan looked away like making her laugh was no big deal. But it was, because some days Emily wanted to scream. Some days the pain, the bills, and the fear all piled up until the world felt too heavy to carry. And then Ethan would say something dry and ridiculous like, "You look like you're planning to fight the IV stand." And somehow she would breathe again. That was the problem. Hating him was getting harder. Meanwhile, Ethan had his own problem. He started waiting for her. Not obviously. Not like some lovesick fool in a movie. He wasn't that dramatic. But when Emily left for procedures, the room became too quiet. The TV sounded stupid. The coffee tasted worse. The bed felt too big. And every time the door opened, he looked up before he could stop himself. It gave him déjà vu. Not because Emily reminded him of someone exactly, but because he knew that feeling. Waiting for someone to come back from a hospital room. Counting minutes. Pretending not to care because caring made you weak. He hated that feeling. And still, every day, he waited. One afternoon, after Emily was taken for another round of tests, Ethan made a call. His voice changed completely. No teasing, no warmth, just clean, sharp control. "I want her pending lab work covered." The person on the other end said something. "No, anonymously." Another pause. "I don't care what the system says. Put it under the Patient Assistance Fund." He listened, jaw tight. "Medication, too. Anything not covered. And no one tells her." He ended the call before they could argue. For a few seconds, he sat still with the phone in his hand. Then he looked toward Emily's empty bed. Her old handbag was still there, sitting by the pillow like a tired little guard dog. Ethan exhaled. "This is a bad idea," he muttered. But he did it anyway, because some things were not about being a hero. Sometimes you just saw someone drowning and couldn't stand there acting polite. That evening, Emily came back with a weird look on her face. Suspicious. dangerously suspicious. She dropped onto her bed and stared at him. "What did you do?" Ethan didn't look up. "I've done many things. You'll need to narrow it down. My medication was approved. Congratulations. And my lab balance disappeared. Maybe the hospital finally stopped being useless." She leaned forward. "Ethan." He looked at her then, calm as ever. "Emily." "Don't Emily me. I wasn't aware your name was off limits. Did you pay for something?" "No." The lie came too fast. She noticed. He noticed that she noticed. For a moment, the room went quiet. Then Emily gave a short laugh, but there was no humor in it. "Right, because rich guys in VIP rooms never chewed it behind the scenes." "Sounds like a theory." "It sounds like my life being weird again." "Your life seems committed to that." She wanted to snap back, but the words didn't come. Instead, her face changed. The anger faded, and something tired slipped through. "Do you know what's embarrassing?" she asked. Ethan said nothing. Having to be grateful for every tiny thing, every discount, every delay, every nurse who looks at you like you're one bill away from disappearing. His expression softened, almost invisibly. Emily looked down at her hands. "I hate feeling like a problem someone has to solve." "You're not a problem." She looked up. The words were simple, too simple. But he said them like he meant them. No joke, no smirk, no rich guy distance, just Ethan. For once, she didn't know what to do with that. So, naturally, she ruined the moment. "Wow, was that kindness? Should I call someone?" His mouth curved slightly. "Please don't. It might damage my reputation." "There it is. Mr. Iceberg is back. I was gone for 4 seconds. Longest 4 seconds of my week." He leaned back. "You keep track?" She froze. He knew he'd hit something. Emily rolled her eyes too quickly. "Don't flatter yourself." "I wasn't. You were doing it for me." "Umora," she muttered, forgetting he didn't speak Russian. "What was that?" "It means you're impossible." "I'm sure it means something nicer." "Stop dreaming, Walker." Their eyes locked. This time neither of them looked away right away. The room was dim. The TV was playing some nonsense neither of them cared about. Outside, rain tapped softly against the window. Emily felt the strangest pull in her chest. Not love, not yet. Something sharper, warmer, more annoying. Like her heart had decided to chew it without asking permission. Ethan saw it too. She could tell. His smile faded. His gaze dropped for half a second to her lips, then back to her eyes. And that was enough. Too much, actually. Emily cleared her throat and looked at the TV. "This show is still awful." Ethan looked away too. "Terrible. We should change it." "We should." Neither of them moved. For a long moment, they just sat there, pretending the air between them hadn't gone completely electric. Then Emily grabbed the remote. Ethan reached for it at the same time. Their fingers touched. Barely. A stupid, tiny touch. But both of them froze like idiots. Emily pulled her hand back first. "Take it," she said, trying to sound bored. Ethan picked up the remote. "Scared?" "Of you? Please." "Good. Good." They stared at the TV like it held the secrets of the universe, but neither of them was watching. And that was the real problem. Because Emily Carter had started this whole mess thinking Ethan Walker was just another arrogant millionaire with nice watches and no heart. But now she wasn't so sure. And Ethan, who had spent years keeping people at a safe distance, was beginning to realize something even worse. He didn't just notice when Emily left the room. He missed her. Emily had reached a very dangerous conclusion. Ethan Walker was impossible. Not because he was cold, not because he was rich, not even because he had that infuriating habit of looking calm while everyone else was quietly falling apart. He was impossible because one minute he acted like the CEO of Antarctica, and the next, He'd casually hand her a cup of coffee exactly the way she liked it. 2 sugars? Emily asked one morning, staring at the cup. Ethan shrugged. It looked right. She frowned. I've never told you that. You didn't have to. She blinked. What does that mean? It means you always steal 2 sugar packets from breakfast. Emily looked at the coffee, then at him, then back at the coffee. That's creepy. It's called paying attention. Same thing. He smirked. She hated that smirk, mostly because it made her smile back. Days started blending together. Treatments, breakfast, hospital hallways, evening TV. But somehow everything felt lighter now. The hospital was still boring enough to make wallpaper look exciting, yet Emily caught herself waiting for the evenings, because evenings meant Ethan. Sometimes they'd spend an hour arguing over terrible movies. Sometimes they'd invent ridiculous stories about other patients. The guy in room 406 is definitely a retired spy, Emily whispered one afternoon. Ethan didn't even look up from his book. No. Yes. No. He has mysterious sunglasses. He's recovering from eye surgery. Exactly what a spy would say. Ethan sighed dramatically. I regret encouraging your imagination. You encourage it every day. That's my biggest mistake. She laughed, a real laugh, the kind that made her forget, for just a second, why she was even in the hospital. And Ethan noticed. He always noticed. One afternoon, rain tapped softly against the windows. While they sat sharing a bag of crackers, neither of them admitted to stealing from lunch. Emily suddenly asked, So, what did you actually do before all this? He stayed quiet for a second. I worked. Very mysterious. You asked. I expected more than one word. I built companies. She stared. Plural? He nodded. How many? I stopped counting. Emily whistled. So, you're ridiculously rich. I've been called worse. She leaned back. I don't get it. What? You could literally be anywhere. So could you. No. She shook her head. I mean, somewhere warm, somewhere with beaches, somewhere without hospital food. He looked out the window. I've learned something. What? Money buys comfort. He paused. It doesn't negotiate with life. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Emily quietly looked at him. That wasn't something people who loved money usually said. That evening, she told him about herself, about working 2 jobs, about taking night classes she never finished, about losing her mother years ago, about pretending everything was okay because crying never paid the bills. Ethan listened, really listened. No phone, no interruptions, no advice, just silence. When she finished, he quietly asked, You always carry the world by yourself? Emily forced a grin. Someone has to. You look tired. I am. You don't have to pretend with me. That sentence landed harder than either of them expected. Emily looked away, because pretending had become a habit, and somehow, he had noticed, the attraction between them wasn't subtle anymore, not even close. Nurses smiled every time they walked together to physical therapy. One of the older patients winked at Emily and whispered, You two make a cute couple. Emily almost dropped her water bottle. We're not. I know, the old man interrupted with a grin. That's why it's funny. Even Ethan couldn't hide a smile. Then came Daniel, room 418, tall, confident, funny, the kind of patient who flirted with every nurse in the building. He sat beside Emily in the therapy room one afternoon. You know, Daniel said, I've been trying to catch you alone for 3 days. Emily laughed awkwardly. That's either sweet or terrifying. I was hoping for sweet. He smiled. I was thinking, when we're discharged, maybe dinner? Emily hesitated. Before she could answer, a familiar voice appeared behind them. Emily. She turned. Ethan, standing in the doorway, expression unreadable. I've been looking for you. Daniel stood up politely. You must be Ethan. I must. Daniel offered his hand. Ethan shook it. Firm, calm, cold. So, Daniel smiled. I'll let you two talk. As soon as he walked away, Emily crossed her arms. What was that? What? You interrupted. I needed to tell you dinner was served. She stared. Dinner starts in 45 minutes. I know. You seriously came all the way here because of that? I happened to be walking past. Emily burst out laughing. Liar. I prefer selective honesty. For the first time, he actually looked annoyed, and strangely, Emily liked it, way more than she should have. But karma didn't wait long. The next day, a woman walked into their room wearing designer heels that probably cost more than Emily's yearly rent. Perfect makeup, perfect hair, perfect confidence. She kissed Ethan on the cheek like she'd done it 100 times before. Ethan, she smiled, I've missed you. Emily looked away so quickly her neck almost hurt. The woman barely acknowledged her existence. So, she laughed, when are you escaping this place? Everyone's asking about you. The whole crowd misses you. Emily silently folded her blanket. Crowd. Of course, rich people had crowds, parties, private clubs, people who looked expensive just standing still. She suddenly felt completely out of place. The woman kept talking. I reserved your favorite table. Everyone's waiting. Emily forced herself to focus on the TV. She couldn't hear half the conversation anymore. Didn't want to. Because for some reason, it hurt. Way more than it should. When the visitor finally left, the room stayed unusually quiet. Ethan looked at Emily. You've been very quiet. I'm watching TV. The TV isn't on. Emily looked at the black screen. Oh. He waited. Nothing. Finally, she sighed. Your girlfriend seems nice. He frowned. She's not my girlfriend. Sure. She's not. Emily shrugged. Honestly, it's none of my business. It wasn't. At least, that's what she kept telling herself. That night, she couldn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling while the same thought kept running circles in her head. Don't be stupid. He's rich. People like him live in a different world. This is 50-50. Maybe he genuinely cares. Maybe you're just another interesting hospital story he'll forget in a week. Don't be that girl. Don't fall. Across the room, Ethan wasn't sleeping either. He watched the city lights through the window. He hadn't let anyone get close in years. It was easier that way. No expectations. No disappointment. No losing people. But Emily kept slipping past every wall he'd built, and that scared him far more than any diagnosis. The next evening, the power flickered during a summer storm. The television went dark. Only the small bedside lamp remained on. Rain drummed softly against the windows. Emily stood near the glass, watching lightning flash over the city. It's beautiful, she whispered. It is. She hadn't noticed Ethan walking over. Now he was standing beside her. Close. Very close. Neither of them moved. Emily could hear his breathing, feel the warmth from his shoulder. It's weird, she said quietly. What is? I hated you the first day. I remember. I was convinced you were just another arrogant millionaire. Were you wrong? She looked into his green eyes. I don't know anymore. He smiled sadly. Neither do I. Silence. Long, heavy, real. Emily slowly turned toward him. He did the same. Neither of them looked away. The world outside disappeared. The rain, the hallway, the machines, everything. There was only the tiny space between them, a few inches, then one. Emily's heartbeat became impossible to ignore. Ethan lifted his hand, very slowly. His fingers gently brushed a loose strand of hair away from her face. She didn't pull back, didn't breathe. His eyes dropped to her lips. Hers did the same. A millimeter, maybe less. The air itself seemed to stop. Then, knock. The door flew open. Evening medication. The doctor walked in carrying a clipboard. Emily and Ethan jumped apart so quickly they almost looked guilty. The doctor frowned. Did I interrupt something? Emily grabbed the nearest magazine. No. Ethan picked up the TV remote that wasn't even turned on. Not at all. The doctor looked from one to the other, then smiled to himself. I'll come back in 5 minutes. The door closed. Silence. Emily covered her burning face. Well, Ethan cleared his throat. That was, awkward. The biggest disaster of the week. She laughed. He laughed too. Neither of them dared look at the other again, but both of them knew exactly what had almost happened. And somehow, that unfinished moment felt even stronger than a kiss. The next morning began like every other. Hospital coffee, gray skies, Emily pretending everything was fine, Ethan pretending nothing had almost happened the night before. They barely spoke, not because they were angry, because neither of them knew what to say after standing one breath away from a kiss. So they chose silence. It was safer, or so they thought. Around noon, Emily went downstairs for another blood test. The lab was crowded. People shuffled from one line to another. Nurses hurried through the hallways. Printers spat out endless paperwork. Emily waited by the reception desk while one of the nurses searched for her file. "I'm sorry," the woman said. "Your payment record is in another folder." "No rush." A few seconds later, another nurse walked over carrying several documents. "Can you put Mr. Walker's authorization back into his file?" Emily froze. The first nurse nodded. "Everything for Miss Carter has already been processed." Emily frowned. "What do you mean, processed?" The nurses exchanged quick glances. The older one smiled politely. "Oh, you weren't supposed to..." "Supposed to what?" The woman hesitated, then quietly handed Emily a document. It was paid. Emily looked down. One page, another, then another. Laboratory tests, medication, private room, specialist consultations, every single invoice, paid in full. At the bottom of nearly every page, authorization approved by Ethan Walker. Her hands slowly began to shake. "No," she whispered. "No." The nurse tried to explain. "He specifically asked us not to tell you." Emily didn't hear another word. She turned around and walked away. Fast, then faster. By the time she reached the 4th floor, she wasn't walking anymore. She was storming down the hallway. Ethan was reading when the door slammed open so hard it hit the wall. He looked up. One glance at Emily's face, and he knew. She threw the stack of papers onto his bed. "They told me." Silence. He looked at the documents, then back at her. "I see. That's all you've got? What would you like me to say?" "The truth. I've never lied." Emily laughed, a sharp, broken laugh. "Oh, really?" She picked up another invoice and shoved it toward him. "Every treatment. Every test. The room. The medication. Since the first day. And you seriously think you never lied?" "I didn't tell you." "Exactly." Her voice echoed through the room. "You let me think miracles were happening. You let me thank strangers. You let me feel stupid. I didn't want you to feel obligated. I didn't ask for your money." "I know." "Then why?" He stood up, slowly, calmly, too calmly. "I wanted to help." Emily threw her hands into the air. "There it is. The rich guy saves the poor girl. Beautiful story. Must make you feel incredible." His jaw tightened. "It wasn't like that." "Oh, stop. You probably tell yourself you're changing lives. You think writing checks makes you some kind of hero? I never wanted to be one." "No?" She pointed at the papers. "Then what is all this?" Charity? Pity? A project? I am not your project. Her breathing became uneven. She hated how close tears were. She hated herself even more for letting him see it. Ethan stayed silent for several seconds, too many seconds. Then something inside him finally snapped. Enough. His voice wasn't loud. It was worse. Cold, sharp, final. Emily blinked. She had never heard him speak like that. You think this was about money? He stepped closer. You think I looked at you and saw some poor girl who needed saving? Didn't you? No. Then what? You. She frowned. What? I saw you. The woman who apologizes every time someone carries something for her. The woman who pretends she's fine even when she's falling apart. The woman who smiles while she's terrified because she thinks nobody wants to see the truth. Emily's eyes widened. He kept going. His voice was shaking now. Actually shaking. I paid because every single day you worried more about bills than about staying alive. I paid because you counted sugar packets like they were luxury items. I paid because I couldn't stand watching you choose between medication and dignity. I paid because... He stopped, closed his eyes for 1 second, then looked directly at her. I paid because somewhere along the way, you became important to me. Silence, heavy, breathless. Emily stared at him. The words hit harder than any scream could have. But pride is a dangerous thing, especially when it's protecting a wounded heart. So that's it? She whispered. You decided what was best for me? I decided to help. You decided without asking. Because I knew you'd refuse. Damn right I would have. Exactly. She shook her head. No. You don't get to do that. You don't get to walk into someone's life with your money and fix everything. I wasn't fixing you. You were trying. And you know what's the worst part? She laughed again. This time there was nothing human in the sound. For 1 second, I actually believed you saw me. I did. No, she took 1 step back. You saw someone broken enough to rescue. His face changed. Not angry, not cold, just tired, deeply tired. I can't win with you. You were never supposed to. Neither of them spoke again, not for almost a full minute. The room felt smaller than ever. Finally, Ethan walked to the wardrobe, opened it, pulled out his duffel bag. Emily frowned. What are you doing? He folded his clothes carefully, one shirt, then another. I'm transferring. What? Another wing. She stared at him. You're leaving? I think that's best. You seriously think walking away fixes this? No. He zipped the bag closed. I think staying makes it worse. She wanted to stop him. She really did. But the words refused to come, because if she asked him to stay, she'd have to admit she wanted him there, and she wasn't ready. Not yet. A nurse knocked softly. Mr. Walker? I'm ready. Emily looked at him. He picked up his bag, walked toward the door, stopped for 1 second without turning around. I hope you get better, Emily. Not your treatment, not your test results, you. Then he walked out. The door closed quietly behind him. No dramatic slam, no music, just click. The silence that followed was unbearable. Emily stood in the middle of the room, not moving. His bed was already empty, the chair by the window, gone. His coffee mug, gone. His jacket, gone. It looked like he had never been there at all. She slowly sat down on her own bed, then noticed something. The TV remote, still lying exactly where they had both reached for it a few nights earlier. She picked it up, held it tightly, then suddenly threw it onto the bed. Oh, come on. She buried her face in her hands. This is such a disaster. For the first time since coming to the hospital, she wasn't thinking about money. She wasn't thinking about treatments. She wasn't thinking about bills. She didn't care about any of it. She would have paid back every dollar, every cent, every impossible hospital bill, if it meant Ethan Walker would walk back through that door. That was the moment the truth finally hit her. It had never been about the money. It had never been about pride. She hadn't lost because someone secretly paid her medical bills. She had lost because she had pushed away the only person who had ever looked at her and seen Emily, not her problems. The room had never felt so large or so empty. Emily barely slept. The room felt unfamiliar now, not because anything had changed, but because Ethan was gone. His side of the room stayed perfectly made, waiting for a patient who would never come back. She caught herself looking toward the door every few minutes, then getting angry at herself for doing it. The next morning, one of the nurses came in to check her medication. Emily hesitated before asking, "Which room did Mr. Walker move to?" The nurse looked surprised. "You don't know?" "Know what?" "He asked to be transferred immediately." Emily nodded slowly. "I know." The nurse sighed. "I've honestly never met anyone like him." Emily looked up. "What do you mean?" The woman smiled sadly. "He argued with administration for almost an hour because they wanted to list his payments as donations." Emily frowned. "He didn't want his name anywhere." Emily felt her stomach tighten. The nurse continued while organizing the medication tray. "He kept saying the same thing. If she ever finds out it was me, it'll ruin everything." Emily froze. "He said that?" The nurse nodded. "He practically begged us." "Please don't tell her. She deserves to believe people can still be kind without expecting applause." Emily slowly sat down. For a long moment she couldn't hear anything. Not the hallway, not the machines, not even the nurse speaking. Only her own words echoed inside her head. "You bought me. You pitied me. You wanted to play the hero." It hit her like déjà vu. Every accusation, every sarcastic comment, every wall she'd built before he even had a chance to explain. She covered her face with both hands. What have I done? For the first time in years, Emily stopped blaming everyone else. Not life, not money, not rich people, not bad luck, just herself. Because the truth hurt. She hadn't been protecting her pride. She'd been hiding behind it. It was easier to believe every wealthy person would eventually disappoint her than risk believing one of them might actually care. She laughed quietly through her tears. What a mess. Then she stood up. "No," she whispered. "I'm done running." Finding Ethan wasn't difficult. His new room was in another wing of the hospital. Emily stopped outside the door. Her hand hovered over the handle. For several seconds. Nothing. Then she knocked. "Come in." She opened the door. Ethan looked up from the book he wasn't actually reading. Neither of them spoke. Not immediately. Emily noticed his coffee sitting untouched beside the bed. She noticed he looked more tired than she had ever seen him. He noticed she looked like she hadn't slept. Finally, she walked inside. "I owe you an apology." Ethan stayed quiet. "No jokes today?" he asked softly. She shook her head. "No. I'm fresh out." Silence settled between them again. Emily took a slow breath. "I spent my whole life believing that money always comes with strings attached." She looked directly into his eyes. "I was convinced people either wanted something or wanted to feel better about themselves. I judged you before I even knew you." She laughed bitterly. "I judged your watch, your room, your clothes, your wallet. I built an entire version of you in my head, and almost none of it was real." Ethan lowered his eyes. "You had your reasons." "No," she shook her head again. "I had my fears. And I made you pay for them." Her voice cracked. "When the nurse told me what you actually said," she smiled through tears, "I realized something." He looked back at her. "I wasn't angry because you paid. I was terrified because someone finally cared. And I didn't know what to do with that. Another long silence. Emily took one more step closer. I fell in love with you. No drama, no music, no grand speech, just the truth. Simple, quiet, real. And it scared me more than being sick ever did. Ethan closed his book. Slowly. You know what scared me? Emily looked at him. You. She blinked. The first day you walked into our room, you looked ready to fight the entire hospital. I probably was. I know. A tiny smile appeared on his face. You were stubborn. Annoying. You argued about everything. I still do. I know. He stood up. I told myself I'd stay out of your life. I failed on day one. Emily smiled through another tear. Why? He stepped closer, so close that neither of them had to raise their voices anymore. Because underneath all that sarcasm, I saw someone carrying the weight of the whole world alone. Someone who kept apologizing just for existing. He gently tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. And all I wanted was to make that weight a little lighter. Emily closed her eyes for a second. You should have told me. I know. You should have trusted me. I know. She nodded. And I should have trusted you. He smiled. I know. For a second, they simply stood there. No walls, no masks, no pride. Then Emily reached for his hand. This time, neither of them pulled away. A week later, they were both discharged. No dramatic music, no photographers, no perfect Hollywood ending. Emily carried the same old, worn handbag. Ethan carried the same travel bag. Outside the hospital, the summer air felt almost unfamiliar. Emily looked at him. So, I guess this is where normal people say something romantic. Ethan smiled. We've never been very good at normal. Fair point. She slipped her fingers into his. He held her hand naturally, like it had always belonged there. Together they started walking down the sidewalk. No promises, no speeches about forever. Just two people who had finally stopped pretending. Maybe that's the strange thing about life. Sometimes the biggest mistakes aren't the loud ones. Sometimes the real disaster happens quietly. The moment we decide who someone is before giving them the chance to prove us wrong. We judge clothes, cars, money, status. We convince ourselves that kindness must always hide an agenda because that's easier than believing genuine goodness still exists. Pride whispers that asking for help makes us weak. Fear tells us to keep our distance. And before we realize it, we've pushed away the very person who never wanted anything in return. Real kindness doesn't advertise itself. It doesn't shout across every party. It doesn't post receipts. It doesn't need applause. It simply shows up. Quietly. Again and again. So before you decide that someone is only their wallet, their job, or the life they seem to have, pause for a second. Because the person you're ready to judge today may quietly become the one you'll regret losing tomorrow. And maybe that's the lesson Emily and Ethan had to learn the hard way. Not everything is healed by medicine. Some wounds disappear only when pride finally lets go, and the heart is brave enough to believe what the eyes were too quick to judge.